Admiral. I'm here today. I'm here with Jay Ramana. Hey Jay, how you going?
Hey Jonathan, good, thank you. How are you?
Well, Jay, we've gone together a few times. We've had quite a few chats, and in particular, we've discussed this idea of this changing workplace, this changing workforce. We're both involved in workplaces, and we're talking to a lot of clients, and I think we decided that there's probably three areas that we've identified. There's offshoring, outsourcing, and technology, in particular automation and AI. I just want to get your thoughts, in particular around that last one, technology, because a lot of people talking about it. There's so much chatter and discussion about AI and technology.
You're
Give us
right.
your thoughts, Jay.
Yes, great question, Jonathan. You're right. There's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of noise around it. I think before we get into it, I would like to sort of just spend a few seconds on the why. Why are we here? I think there's been in the last couple of years and more recently a lot of changes globally in the economy, and has also the shortage of skills, which has been ongoing for years and years in many industry, has prompted a lot of businesses to think about, offshoring, outsourcing, or technology as ways of working. The legal framework also hasn't helped a lot, as you probably know better than me, obviously. The changes in the recent legislation with regards to, the minimum wage, right to disconnect, and so on and so forth. So, anyway, talking about AI and technology. Look, Jonathan, for me, it's nothing new. I remember when I was studying physics back in uni 25 years ago. We were at the time talking about AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum technology, and we were using a lot of that as part of research and in the lab. Never thought that they would see the light of day, but here we are. There's a lot of AI being used, and why? For me, it's accelerated technology coming into force. So some people would say it's just innovation at play. I don't think it's just innovation at play. I think it's innovation, but also I think it's fueled by the need that we talked about, and also there's three things that has actually created this acceleration. We have had a lot of access to data in the last couple of years. The power of computing, lots of investment have been made in cloud computing, and also in data centers around the world, have fueled the real sort of evolution and innovation. Also, stemming from research, we have had a lot of breakthroughs in the actual algorithms that are being used to teach the machine how to respond like human beings. So, sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps in terms of understanding a little bit what is this AI and how is it going to help us. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you can come at technology and artificial intelligence in so many different angles, so many different ways, and you've obviously expressed a few going down more I suppose, what the technology is or potentially could be. I'm interested in your thoughts, especially from the perspective of your company, Maxstaff, because you're not just merely a labour hire company. That you're more than that. You're actually evolved towards that. Is that a response because of the evolving workforce, or is that because of something completely different?
Definitely a response of the evolving workforce. For me, when I set up Maxstaff, it was a question of embracing the challenges that the workforce was posing from a legal point of view as well as from an economic point of view. There were major challenges there, and there still are major challenges, but also look at the opportunities. What are the opportunities out there in terms of solving the problem of small and medium businesses when it comes to shortage of skills, getting job done? I was working in labor hire and recruitment as well as training businesses before, and often was meeting customers or clients who would say, well, we need staff, we need people in this area, and so on. And a lot of the traditional labor hire companies or even recruitment companies would just go and find existing staff and put them. If they don't exist, then they approach training companies and say, can you train them on this particular skill set? I look at it in a different way. I ask the question, what is it that you want to get done? And I find out that if you're looking for staff of a particular skill set for your company, it means you want to get a job done. And I go to the point of finding out what is the job that you want to get done. And if I can, Staff will do the job for you. So it's a bit of a mixture of outsourcing and offshoring, but at the
Yep.
same time, use of technology. We claim that we can do the job better, cheaper, and more efficiently than it can be done by their own company. That's when we will take on the job. So how do we make it happen? We make it happen through technology. We embrace technology, we embrace offshoring, we embrace outsourcing, and in between those three, we have a solution for solving the challenges that we are faced with.
I'm interested to know because if you think about this from every perspective, for a long time we've had this issue around, hiring the right people, getting the right people on the bus. We've got this concept of, it's difficult to get particular types of skills on board. The increased globalization of workforces, especially now since COVID, there's the ability to have remote workforces, work from home. It's opened up all these different channels and opportunities from a changing workforce perspective. I see that Maxstaff potentially fills a hole there. Is that also from your perspective, and this is, I suppose, one question that probably is more pertinent. If you think about how it's all evolving, how it's all changing, it's quite rapid, and I suppose technology is playing a huge part in this. Is the workforce going to evolve and change even more? Obviously right now we're touching offshore, we're touching remote work, we're doing outsourcing, we're trying to get different types of skills, potentially get someone in a different country to work at different time zones. All these things are coming to play. But is that now hastening the pace of investment in technology and innovation, or do we already have that in place and it's now about trying to adjust, and the market's trying to adjust and the workforce is trying to adjust?
I think it's a turning point in the way we do business. We are at the tip of the iceberg. I think there's much, much more to come when it comes to technology, particularly. And in Australia, for instance, a lot of companies are claiming that, oh yeah, we use AI and we use technology in our workforce. And when you drill further, you find that, well, what they understand of using AI and technology is they use ChatGPT and Trello and Monday.com and a couple of others of these cloud-based systems, and they call this AI. The reality is completely different. AI is about utilizing the machine, computers or robots or any system, to think like the human being and to act like the human being. Which means making decisions, which means analyzing and making decisions and coming up with solutions that only human beings would traditionally come up with. So I'm thinking of things like in data analytics, the AI now can actually come up with insights and also propose solutions to your challenges at work. So why I say we are only at the tip of the iceberg is because a lot of countries around the world are at different stage of that evolution. Different countries. If you go to China today, they're living in 2050. You go to South Korea, they are in 2060, 2070. We are way, way, way behind when it comes to actual implementation of technology and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and I'm not even talking about quantum technology in the workforce. So we are at the tip of the iceberg. Coupled with that, we have an arbitrage potential. The arbitrage potential is we can get it done overseas at a cheaper and more efficient rate than we can get it done in Australia. And at the same time, we are in a position, because of the power of the Australian economy and the Australian dollar, we have the ability to actually reward people overseas much better than they could be rewarded in their local economy. So this arbitrage possibility, if you can tap into it, allows companies in Australia and also other first world countries like Canada, United States, New Zealand, to actually accelerate the implementation of their AI, and at the end of the day, to get their job done. As I said, at the end of the day, we ask the question, what do you want to get done? You want to get a job done? Well, we will show you what's the best and cheapest way to get the job done.
You've made some really interesting points there, Jay. However, I do want to put this to you because I think what you just said is what we all hope. I think we all hope that technology, automation, AI agents, all the things that are coming is going to assist, help us, support us in doing our work. However, there's probably a different sentiment, or there's another sentiment out there that says that's all well and good, but there's a couple of issues with that. The first being that traditionally what maybe entry level or junior level workers would do, potentially that's going to be initially at least the area or the work that's going to be taken over. And then the second thing is, okay, so once that starts happening and that starts to potentially then take over more roles, what sort of happens to the workforce, in the next couple of years, or next 5 years, next 10 years? What happens then? What happens to the workforce? Obviously, it's going to change, but potentially the difference between this time around and maybe in the past, Industrial Revolution and all those others, is that the pace of change is much quicker.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Because I think there's a strong sentiment going, yes, it's going to help us, support us. We can look at the fridge and we can, scan something. It's going to tell us what we can cook and all these cool things. But once it gets past the cool part, once it gets to actual, help and support, then it starts going past that point. What happens then? And that's a really good. I want to get your thoughts on this, Jay.
I think
you're in a
there will
unique position, I think, to answer this.
Yeah. I've been at the forefront of this. I think if the short answer to your question is a change of mindset, a change of skill set, and a change of the ability to recruit and manage people. So change of mindset is we need to get out of this mindset that AI is an adversary, is the enemy. I think we need to embrace the mindset that AI is here to stay. AI is just evolution, is just innovation. My mom started work as a typist, and during her through her career, they changed her job and they called her data processor. And what actually happened is they stopped using those old typewriters and they brought computers. So her job changed from being a typist to a data processor. So that's, you mentioned the pace. Obviously, it took a long time for this to happen. In our world, this change is happening much, much faster. So if we're going to sit on the fence and say AI is going to replace my job and it's all doom and gloom, well, it will be doom and gloom. But if you sit on the side of the fence where you look at AI and you say, okay, there's opportunities out there for me to embrace, even if you're at the lower level of your career, you can really reorient or re-engineer your career by learning new skills and adopting new technology. Give you the example of the data entry person. Back in the day, or even now, a couple of years ago, we were collecting data on a small scale, and we feeding the data into Excel, and we ask Excel to produce a graph or feed it with a formula and produce a pivot table so we can actually analyze it. Today, if you can do the same job, but you're not collecting a small set of data. You should be learning how to collect big data. And if you're in the medical field, how do you collect big data? And if you're a traffic engineer, how do you collect big data? That's where you will make the difference. So then I talk about, that's at the individual level and the mindset. There will be a change in skill set. A change in skill set where if you're recruiting people now, you're recruiting people for the future. You need to be looking at what are the current AI utilization skills that they've got. Now, if someone says, I can use ChatGPT, that's not a proof of utilizing AI. So you need to be asking them questions about where they have actually utilized technology and machine learning and artificial intelligence to improve the outcomes of their work. And the third aspect of it is, how do we recruit and how do we manage people? So we, in the existing workforce, in human resources and also line managers, we need to get better at understanding what is AI and how it is going to help the company going forward. That's the only way you can manage people better when it comes to embracing and adopting AI in the workforce.
One last point that I wanted to ask about, because being an employment lawyer, I can see that the law is struggling in some respects to keep up with the pace, and then in other respects is potentially, I'm not saying going backwards, but is also dealing with areas that maybe over-regulating. So as an example, we have, work from home laws, we've got flexible working arrangement legislation, psychosocial risks and hazards. We've also got, relatively complicated modern award structure. And so we have that, quite protected, and there's quite a lot of protections around this. And yet we have this evolving workforce that the law is struggling to deal with. Obviously offshoring, yes, we've had that recent dismissal case again, but that's a bit of a standalone to be honest. Then we have cases around outsourcing and the redefinition of contract. We had the High Court say this is what an employee is, and then the legislation changed that back to essentially the old test. You have this almost yin and yang. You've got this, quite a lot of regulation coming out in the IR law space or employment law space, yet at the same time we're quite behind in dealing with, in particular, things like offshoring, outsourcing, and in particular technology.
Yep.
Where do you think, coming from your perspective, in particular, because I think you have a very unique perspective. It's not, you don't just see it from a outsourcing perspective, not just from an employer perspective, not just from, you have very different, you have a unique ability here to give very unique thoughts on this. Considering the evolving workplace, and in particular around technology, where do you think, the government or law or legislators or Fair Work Commission, where do you think they're going to have a part to play in this? Because obviously they will have to, but where do you think the part's going to be for them going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think at the end of the day, there are risks and benefits in everything we do, right? So when you look at offshoring and outsourcing, it can be a little bit more, it can be clearer where the law stands, even though we're still behind in terms of, what type of contracts we're using, a lot of companies I talk to, a lot of clients, they're using companies like Upwork or Fiverr, and they go online, they hire someone and they call it offshoring. They don't really understand the risks that they are taking when it comes to do it that way. There are obviously better ways of doing things so you can mitigate the risk, and that's the easy part. But when it comes to technology, I think it will take a lot of time for the legal framework, for the keep to catch up, because technology is moving at such a fast pace,
Yeah.
And for the law to actually follow, it's a big challenge. So how do we make it work? I think education. We need to have lots of consultation with the workforce. If you work in robotics today, there's not even an award for an industry in automation and robotics, right? We have traditional awards, and those awards are based on paying people for work on an hourly rate, or we pay people on a task-based approach. But we haven't even talked about what happens if my work is actually split. 50% is done by a human being and 50% is done by the robot. Who's getting paid? Is the human being getting paid or the robot getting paid? So it's not clear. What risks are you taking when it comes to safety? So we just saw the crash of the Air India flight recently, and jury is still out there, but people are talking about whether it's a pilot error or is it a system error or a computer error. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, this is where it is. So if you bring it to the local level, if you're using technology at work, where do you draw the line? Where does the human intelligence interfere or interface with the artificial intelligence? At that boundary is where the legal framework will need to sort of have a say. I can take some very basic example. Today, we have automated vehicles doing excavation and operations, mining operations. So people are sitting in nice air-conditioned offices in Perth and Brisbane, and remote controlling operations on a mine site thousands and thousands of kilometers away. And we all know that when technology works, everybody's happy, and we are efficient, and it's very safe because it's tried and tested. What happens when there is an error on site? How do we manage that? How does the work health and safety legislation interface with it? We don't have an answer today, right? And that's where legislation will have to play a large part in embracing technology and facilitating it. I just leave you with a question, right? If there was an issue on site when it comes to an excavation work and somebody was injured as a result of that, where does the legislation sit on it?
Well, it's very basic. I mean, obviously, different circumstances may change the answer, but the simple answer is that there's vicarious liability. The employee will be held responsible, and then there will be potentially other people involved who will be held responsible under different types of legislation. Health and safety, probably the biggest one, and workers' compensation maybe as well. But there's others, I'm sure. But I think when we look at how the workforce is trying to, the changing workforce and the law, in my view, can't keep up or doesn't keep up, right? Either doesn't or can't keep up. Either way, and I'm not a person to make comment on those types of things, but that's what I see, and I think if I look at it from that perspective, there has to be there's going to be change. Like, I think trying to put the genie back in the bottle, I think that's a dud conversation. I think that conversation's over. I think it's about we have this change. There's so much change. Technology is just one part of it, probably the biggest one, but it is still a part of it. There's other areas that there's a changing workforce. I mean, even how the workforce is put together. I mean, it's so many times I'll be talking to clients, and you look at the employee, and there's potentially multiple awards that cover them, because the company does very different things. And I'm sure you see that a lot with Maxstaff, Jay, an organization that is not just oil and gas, that is not just a marketing company. They have different prongs, or, they're not just a technology company. We call them these things to put them in categories as much as possible. But when you actually look down and delve deep into what they actually do, well, sometimes you don't actually understand what they do. But secondly, when you do figure it out, it is very different, very unique. And sometimes the answer isn't, you don't get the answer straight away. And I think we look at, I think we can't keep on looking at things black and white. I think there's so much grey area now. Probably do need some regulation to tease some of that out. But from what I see, a lot of the regulation is on areas that maybe already has some established parameters. We're not talking, because I think the stuff that we're talking about right now is much more difficult to legislate about. Yeah. You're not going to get the answers. They're not simple answers.
There's no simple
complex answers.
And right, and I think it comes down to the skills. If you're analyzing those things, you're often asking yourself, what skills do we have to actually even ask the questions of, if we are in HR, we are lawyers, do we actually understand what's really happening in technology these days? Take the example of the medical field. We know that some surgeons are operating on patients remotely.
I agree with you on that, Jay, but I think also we get a bit too hung up on, and I see this a lot, especially technology enthusiasts, who I have a lot of respect for, but it's a bit like Beyond 2000. If you remember the TV show back in the day, like there was all these cool things that people were talking about back in Beyond 2000, and I'm pretty sure it was in the 80s and the 90s, but no one's ever gone back to them and gone, hey, that never came true, because they were never held accountable. And I feel like it's a little bit like that right now. People can pretty much say whatever they like, and they're not really going to be held accountable many years down the track about what it actually becomes or what it actually evolves to. So, a lot of people get too hung up on, look at this cool thing that we can do with technology. And that's great. That's lovely. But I also think about it from a more a practical perspective and potentially more business perspective. Well, how does that work in particular in the workforce or the workplace? Like, how does that work going forward? Because you have a person that can go into a piece of technology and write up a document or whatever it is, review do up a design. But there are obviously some issues with that. There's IP issues. There's all types of other privacy issues that really there's not a lot of stuff around yet to figure out how that works.
That's right. Yeah.
Not really.
Well, that's the catch-up. And I think that's where we need to separate the wheat from the chaff a bit in terms of demystifying what is technology and what is the gimmicky side of technology that will probably never see the light of day, and you cannot blame them for it, because at the end of the day everybody's trying their best and it's trial and error, and some technology will actually see economic value and will be implemented. Some technology out there, like it's always been the case, will just be put on the shelf
Yeah,
for the
and I see
leisure.
what you're saying, Jay. But also, I think people, we look at things because of what excites us. Yeah, almost like, oh,
Yes,
that's exciting.
that's
But
exciting.
when you
Yeah,
sort of when you scratch the surface and you go, well, can I actually do that? I mean, it's sort of like when software salespeople come to you and say, hey, we can do all these things, and actually the software doesn't really do all the things they say. It's a
yeah,
bit like that. I feel like that. I have that same feeling. Yeah, we can do all these things, and then when you sort of scratch the surface, actually to do that is actually quite difficult.
yeah.
And it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do. Actually, a lot of your work to put into to do
Yeah,
that. So, I think where I think there's a bit of a better conversation, which is where I think you were alluding to, which is that okay, there's the education piece, which I think is the first bit, I think, right, and I think people still having this conversation about putting AI or putting technology back in the bottle. I think that's sort of finished, right? I think that's past. I think
yeah, yeah.
that's already passed. I think we're
Yeah, we crossed that bridge. Yeah.
but I also think that people just saying that it's just a support mechanism, I think that's the hope. I think that's the
I
hope
don't
part
think it is.
coming out of us going,
Yeah, I
yep,
think you're right. I think people are hoping that this is just going to be on a scaffold that will
yes,
allow us to continue working. I think the evolution piece is instrumental and quite core to the development of lots of businesses, and with competition, with the change in the economy, change in the global environment, I think it's central to us doing work. So hence, people have not only to consider it as being like a scaffold, but really a core part of their work would be utilizing technology and artificial intelligence at any level, right? So if you're the data collection person, how do you collect data in a way to enable the machine, the intelligence, to actually produce the result that we want? If you're the engineer, obviously you are the core front of making it happen. If you're the HR person, then how do you understand the skills at play and manage people so that they can bring the best of themselves? And if you're the leader, hopefully you're the one who embraces technology and invests in technology as well as people to make it happen. So at every level of the organization, we need to adopt, embrace, and utilize technology to its full potential. And on this, I'll just add, when the companies or the organizations that have realized the real extent of what we're talking about here, well, they very soon realize that the cost of it at the implementation phase is quite steep, you know,
Jay.
versus
Last
what
question.
benefits going to come up. Yeah, go ahead.
Last question before we wrap it up. Um,
Yeah.
so Maxstaff. Just firstly, people listening to this have heard Maxstaff be mentioned a few times. Firstly, can you
Yes.
give us a bit of a rundown of what Maxstaff is, and secondly, to pair that up is how do what spot or what area do you think Maxstaff have going forward in this sort of future workplace?
Exactly. So thanks for the question. So Maxstaff is a business process outsourcing firm utilizing the power of sourcing, finding and sourcing the right talent and managing the talent to produce an outcome that you desire. Okay. So I was just mentioning the cost of implementation of technology. It's well and good that a company can invest in their own organic development in terms of technology. Some companies buy off the shelf and they try to make it their own, but the cost is steep, right? So we found with Maxstaff a happy medium between actually implementing full-blown technology and outsourcing some of the work to us. So if you can scope your work and if you know what project you want to implement, it's good enough to talk to us. We take the project on board, we find the right people anywhere in the world, we manage them, we bring the technology to the table, and we provide you the solution. The old labor hire recruitment model for us in my humble opinion, is broken, because at the end of the day, recruitment firms or labor hire firm charging a fee to find a person, and that's the end
Yep.
of it, right? What happens afterwards? It's really, the risk is on the organization. On our side, we really partner with the organization and we share the risk as well as the reward. So that's what we've been doing, and largely successful, because a lot of companies have realized that, hang on a minute, technology is there, we can implement it, it's going to cost us a lot of money, and the reward or the benefits may not come tomorrow. We're talking 20, 25 years, or maybe even a couple of decades. With Maxstaff, we can accelerate that implementation and we can get the result in much shorter time period.
Well, Jay, it's been a fascinating discussion, and I think it's a bit of a different discussion to what people expected. I hope people got a little bit out of what we've been talking about. Jay from Maxstaff, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure to sit down and have a chat with you and share some of those thoughts. Until the next time.
And I'm Jonathan Mamrell, and thank you so much for coming on. Thanks.